Hello you lot, Miller Corner here, welcome back once again, and this video is going to be something a little bit different but quite frequently requested. For those of you new to this channel, I absolutely love the Fiat Seicento. It was my first car just over 4 years ago. I've technically owned two of them, and one of them is my forever car, my project car. I absolutely adore it. This isn't mine, this car now belongs to my brother. Because so many of you come to this channel for my Seicento content, a few of you message me from time to time asking for any tips, any advice on how to buy a good one of these. So I figured, bearing in mind I write buying guides for quite a lot of cars for my job now as a classic car journalist, I figured why not do a buying guide on the Seicento, a car which by now at least I know a fair bit about. I'm using my brother's car partly because mine's in storage now and partly because mine is a highly modified example where a lot of the bits you need to look out for I've either changed or upgraded or removed or whatever. So we've got a completely standard Seicento here to tell you about, and because I already know how to do a buyer's guide from my job at Classics World, we're going to stick with a formula that works. So first things first, we're going to look at the engine. Is one of the best bits of a Seicento in my opinion. All of them use fuel-injected variants of Fiat's vulnerable and hugely popular fire engine. It originated in the early 1980s and it was so good that the 8-valve fire engine only went out of production a few months ago this year. It was good enough to last nearly 4 decades in production, and that means it's got pride of place in the Seicento. From 1998 when they were launched right up until the October 2000 facelift, they used a single point injected variant. You could get an 899cc version with 38 horsepower or an 1108cc version with 54 horsepower. In the October 2000 facelift, they switched to a multi-point injected version of the 1108, and for emissions reasons, the 899cc car was discontinued. This is a 2002 car, so it's a facelift, which means it's got the multi-point injected version of the engine, and there's a few key identifiers for that. First of all, it's got a circular airbox instead of a square one that you find on the single point injected cars. Second of all, the exhaust manifold on the SPI cars is a 4-into-1 downpipe, which then bolts the catalytic converter in down the bottom. On the multi-point injected cars, in order to get the cat warmer quicker for better emissions, it's got what's called a mani cat, where the catalytic converter is actually part of the exhaust manifold. It's a really hardy little unit. It's designed to be thrashed by Italian drivers, and that means it's got to stand up to a lot of abuse, and indeed these are really durable little engines. They might rattle once they get past about 100,000 miles from the top end a little bit, but again, that's just valve clearances. You can sort this out yourself if it really bothers you, but again, it's never going to kill the engine, and whilst it sounds unpleasant, you can just keep driving it just as hard. It really is nothing to worry about. The only thing you do need to know about the fire engine is that it uses a cam belt, which can break if you don't maintain it at the right intervals, which is about 50,000 miles or 5 years. If it does break, it's not a car killer because this is a non-interference engine, and that means even if you do snap a cam belt, you're not going to bend any valves, and the most inconvenient thing you've got to do is get it trailered home again. If you buy a car which is around that 5-year, 50,000 mile mark for having a cam belt done, factor it into the price of your purchase price on the car, because these cars aren't actually worth that much right now, and when you factor in that having a cam belt done by a garage is about 250-300 quid, that could be as much as 50% of what you pay for the car. On the earlier single point injected cars, they can blow head gaskets from time to time. It's not Rover K series bad, they won't blow a head gasket if you look at them too quickly, but it's worth checking the oil, check the coolant, all the usual signs for a blown head gasket, and if it's good, just change the coolant, keep an eye on things. You can keep having fun with this mad little engine, which is really revvy, really eager. You won't actually be going that fast, but it's a typical small Fiat engine in that you just give it hell from the moment you turn it on to the moment you switch it off, and it'll just come back for more, all while doing well over 40 miles to the gallon. If you couldn't tell, I love these engines. Very quickly, the gearbox. All Seicentos came with a 5-speed manual. There was the option of the Citymatic auto gearbox, but frankly, they're incredibly rare these days and fairly fragile, so I would steer clear. This isn't a Grand Tourer at the end of the day. You're certainly not going to be doing 1,000 miles across Europe in one. Anyway, and the 5-speed manual is pretty hardy. There are people running turbocharged Seicentos with well over 300 horsepower on that stock gearbox. They're hugely capable. Replacements are available for about 50 quid, so there really is nothing on these cars that you can't change, fix or replace for peanuts. Much like the rest of the car, the brakes and suspension are really simple and easy to work with. On all Seicentos you get disc front brakes, which are fine, they pull the car up just fine. ABS was an option, but to be honest, again, it's a really rare thing to come across. On the back you got drum brakes with shoes, as with most small cheap cars of this era, and generally they're fine, they still pull the car up well. Remember, this is only a 730 kilo car at the end of the day, there's not much weight to be pulling up. However, it's worth noting that pretty much all Seicento handbrakes are crap. You can put brand new cables on it, you can put brand new shoes on the back, you're still going to have to tug quite hard on it to get the car to hold itself on a steep hill. It's not dangerously bad, it certainly won't roll back if you don't click it on all the way, but it's worth noting that it is up all the way before you leave it parked on a hill, and as with most of us, just leave it parked in first gear to be sure. The suspension will take a good knock. It's designed for bumpy Italian cities at the end of the day, and that means it is fairly hardy stuff. Even on the sporting models though, with the lowered suspension, it is still fairly roly-poly around corners from stock. Don't be alarmed if it starts to lean over, they do just do that. If you want to balance it up a bit and get it a bit lower and a bit firmer and a bit less roly-poly, coilovers are cheap and an easy upgrade. I've done a video on it, go and watch it. It's a brilliant upgrade to your Seicento if you want to go down the modifying route. Well, if you're still telling the old Fiat's rusty lol jokes, you need yourself a new joke book. The Cinquecento, this car's predecessor, introduced far better standards of rustproofing than any Fiat before it. These cars are designed to last, and indeed, even over 20 years on, they do. The only one thing you do need to check in a Seicento is the rear wheel arches. These cars didn't have rear wheel arch liners from the factory, and that means it's very easy for mud and dirt and grit and all kinds of stuff to get thrown up in these rear arches, particularly the lip here, get trapped in there and then rot the whole rear arch out from within. Have a good look inside from underneath and also from in the boot. Look from the boot floor, make sure there's no signs of scabbing up or, worst case scenario, holes you can put your fist through, which does happen every now and then. The only other place to check for rust on a Seicento is the sills. Now on a standard or a sporting model, nothing to worry about, but on cars like this one with an Abarth body kit, you've got side skirts, and as with pretty much any car with skirts, these can trap mud and again rot the car out from within. Have a good look under here, feel under here, shine a torch. If you can get the car jacked up or on a lift before you buy it, have a damn good look, because again, replacement panels are pretty much non-existent, and again, these cars aren't worth enough to justify that kind of repair yet. But the actual bodywork is really easy to keep in good condition. They don't rust anywhere other than those two places I've mentioned, and replacement panels are relatively easy and cheap to come by. They're not as common as a Fiesta or a Corsa. You're not going to get a whole front end for 20 quid next day, but you might be able to get parts next week and keep your little nugget on the road for many years to come. And one quick thing to note about the wheels. If your car's got the 14-inch Abarth wheels like this one has, you won't have a 14-inch spare wheel. All Seicentos came with a 13-inch Space Saver spare, good for about 50 miles an hour. I'm told you can put a 14-inch spare wheel in there off of a Punto or something, as long as you put a 195/45 profile tyre on it, so it's slim enough that it can actually fit in the spare wheel well.
On the tyre front, the factory size for the 14s, which is 175/50/14, is almost non-existent these days. If you're buying used tyres, check their age, as we saw recently, or swap to 195/45/14s for much better availability and grip.
It's a small, cheap Fiat from 20 years ago, and that means the Seicento interior is pretty basic. There's not much to look out for. If you buy a sporting or an Abarth model, you do get these rather nice sports seats, which are a bit nicer, they do hold you in a bit better, but really there is no substantial gain over standard ones if you don't have them. And if you do want to upgrade the interior of your standard car, you can pick a full set of these up for about 50 quid. Really nice little upgrade. Don't be deceived by the shape of those speakers. You don't have to get really weird shaped curved ones to go in there. Once you pull the cover off with a few screws, there is a normal size and shaped speaker in there with a standard plug. Most Seicentos have a glass panel sunroof that just winds up when you twist a dial. With it all the way down, they are known to chatter, particularly going over bumps, and if yours does do that, just ease it off the tiniest little bit and that should quieten it down a bit. Make it a yearly habit of pulling the sunroof out and sticking a bit of wire or something down the drainage channels just to make sure they're clear and there's no water seeping into your interior. It might seem awkward and unnecessary at the time, but trust me, you ain't going to be saying that when you've got a swimming pool in your driver's footwell. The other option for sunroofs is what's known as the Soleil sunroof, like this car's got from the factory, and it's a fully electric winding back sunroof. If your car does have it, it's a really nice touch and lets a dazzling amount of sunlight in, but make sure, as with any electric folding roof, that you don't open it when it's wet, and make sure that all the seals and all the sliders and everything like that are well lubricated, even just with something like Vaseline to keep moisture out, and make sure it keeps moving quickly so that you can seal yourself up when it rains and open it up when it doesn't. Other than that, all the old jokes about Italian car electrics being bad are exactly that. They're just old jokes. The Seicento electrics are really, really hardy and they last well. And most of the time, any problems you do get are really, really simple things. Last year, my fan blower and my cigarette lighter both stopped working at the same time, which seemed a bit odd, but it turned out that all I'd done is just had a multi-adapter in the cigarette lighter for too long, and I'd popped a fuse, which the two things share. Changed the fuse, and it was good as gold. So if anything, this is a really, really good car to learn how to work on car electrics, because it's so simple, and any problems you do get are really easy to fix. So there's everything you need to know if you want to buy yourself a mad little Fiat Seicento. But now you know what to look out for, which one should you buy? The S model is fairly rare these days. It's the base spec, it's the bottom of the range, and frankly, it's too basic in my opinion. There's a few niceties that you could do with it, even just stepping up to the SX model for things like colour-coded bumpers and electric windows. The sporting models are actually really, really easy to get hold of. They're probably the most common form of Seicento you'll find, and you do get a few nice little extras, the 13-inch wheels, the body kit, the sports seats. For me, the Seicento Sporting is the one to go for, and not just because I'm biased. You can buy one for about 500 or 600 quid. They're durable, they're huge fun to drive even in stock form, and frankly you really can't go wrong. If you do want to step up to an Abarth model like this one, you get a few nice little bits and pieces, the 14-inch wheels, the side skirts, and a few little Abarth badges here and there. I wouldn't pay more than about a 200, maybe 300 quid premium for an Abarth model, because the reality is you're not actually getting that much more for your money, and certainly you're not getting any more performance. One model I'd possibly look to even avoid is the Michael Schumacher edition. Yes, you got a sticker of his signature on the back, yes, you got a numbered plaque, yes, you got a chrome surround on the gear lever and a chrome handbrake pull, but really, that's all you got. And the amount of money people seem to think these are worth blows the mind on some occasions. I've seen those advertised for over £2,000. These are not a £2,000 car yet, even in mint condition with 20,000 miles on them. Get yourself a Seicento for between 500 and 800 quid, maybe push it up to £1,000 for a really clean one, and frankly, you can't go wrong. They're simple and cheap to maintain, they're huge fun to drive even in stock form, they do well over 40 miles to the gallon. If you're learning to drive like my brother is, the proof's in the pudding. I learned to drive in one, my brother learned to drive in one. It really is the perfect first car, and if you want a cheap little runaround, there's not many cars that will put this much of a smile on your face for so little cash. With any luck, those of you that do want to buy a Seicento, that's answered any questions you may have, but if there's anything I've missed that you do want to know about, drop it in the comments below and I'll answer as best I can to get as many of you lovely lot into these mad little cars. I'll catch you very soon when I'm back working on my Seicento, but for now, thanks very much for watching everybody, and have a brilliant rest of your day. Catch you soon, and have a good one.